Laughter turns to silence. She broke his arm without moving her feet. The Galactic Combat Tournament wasn't just the most prestigious fighting competition in the known universe, it was also coincidentally the perfect venue for demonstrating just how pathetically behind humans were in the grand scheme of things. At least that's what everyone thought until about 6 hours ago. A massive arena on Proxima Centauri's third moon gleamed under artificial sunlight, its translucent dome filtering the harmful radiation while allowing spectators to enjoy the illusion of an open-air bloodbath. 17,000 beings from across the galaxy filled the stands, their appendages clutching overpriced refreshments while bookmakers took final bets on what was supposed to be the most predictable championship in decades. Zixstar, the 9-time champion from the crystalline world of Pined, in his preparation chamber, his exoskeleton shimmered with bioluminescent patterns that translated roughly spelled out everyone else's garbage in the common trade language, with 4 arms boasting the crushing strength of industrial hydraulics and a reaction time measured in microseconds. The Maporan warrior had dominated the tournament circuit for the past 15 cycles with a mixture of brutal efficiency and theatrical flair. Another trophy for my collection, Zixstar announced to no one in particular, his mandibles clicking in what passed for laughter among his kind. And against a human, the committee must have developed a sense of humor. Outside, the announcement system switched to the pompous tones of the tournament spokesperson. For the first time in tournament history, a representative of Earth has qualified for the championship round. Please welcome competitor 7 Delta 9. The crowd's reaction was less applause and more the sound of 17,000 beings choking simultaneously on their beverages. Through the eastern entrance walked a human female, average height, athletic but unremarkable build. Her tournament uniform hung slightly loose around the shoulders. By galactic standards, she appeared about as threatening as a decorative houseplant. Is this some kind of joke? Shouted a 7-limbed Arcturian from the premium seating section. I paid 12,000 credits for this. The human Dr. Min, quantum physicist and reluctant draft pick for humanity's first tournament appearance, surveyed the arena with the detached interest of someone examining particularly unimpressive lab results. She rolled her shoulders once, nodded to the officials, and took her position in the competitors' circle. The odds-making algorithms nearly crashed as the betting shifted to 10,000 to 1 against the human. Tournament historians would later note this as the single most profitable opportunity in gambling history, but at that moment no one was insane enough to bet on her. Zixstar entered to thunderous applause, his 4 arms raised in premature victory. He spotted his human opponent and did something that would soon become infamous in sporting circles across 17 galaxies. He pointed at her and laughed. Little did anyone realize that in approximately 8 minutes and 42 seconds, the definition of combat advantage would be permanently rewritten, and the Mephoran champion would learn why making assumptions about lesser-known species was the universe's most expensive mistake. The Galactic Combat Tournament began as a diplomatic solution to prevent interstellar war, quite literally a way for advanced civilizations to beat each other senseless without destroying planets in the process. Founded 317 standard years ago after the catastrophic Orion conflict nearly wiped out 3 sentient species, the tournament transformed ritualized combat into the galaxy's premier sporting event. The Committee of 17, composed of representatives from the founding species, established rules favoring direct physical confrontation while prohibiting energy weapons and most technological enhancements. This supposedly created a level playing field, a concept that had every human diplomat struggling not to burst into hysterical laughter during orientation briefings. Humans, to put it in the technical xenobiological classification were considered pathetically squishy. The average human possessed approximately 1/5 the strength of a Vargonian, 1/10 the speed of a Taxian cloud dweller, and none of the natural weaponry that made the Krell such formidable opponents human. Bones broke under pressures that merely tickled most competitors' human skin tore. Where others had natural armor, human reflexes might as well have been measured with a sundial compared to species that perceive time in nancond increments. The tournament's previous champions read like an evolutionary arms race. The 3-time champion Gorvan had exoskeletal plates that could withstand direct artillery strikes. Before him, the infamous Zethul possessed tentacles that could generate localized electrical fields strong enough to temporarily disable opponents' nervous systems. The Valyrian champion Draelmak had won twice using his species' ability to secrete paralytic toxins through specialized gland. And then came Zixtar, whose multi-limbed fighting style and crystalline physiology had made him practically unbeatable for nearly a decade. Humans had been offered tournament participation rights upon joining the Galactic Confederation 60 years ago, but wisely declined each time. Most human diplomats reacted to the invitation with the enthusiasm of someone being offered the chance to juggle active plasma grenades while blindfolded. So when the official tournament entry included a human competitor, most assumed it was either a clerical error or some bizarre human practical joke. The Confederation information networks buzzed with theories ranging from the absurd to the slightly less absurd. Some suggested the human would pilot a combat mech, prohibited by Section 87.3 of the rules, while others speculated about secret biological enhancements prohibited by Section 42.9. The most popular theory involved some elaborate scheme to embarrass Zixtar without actually fighting him, perhaps by dying in an especially dramatic fashion. Underground information channels carried whispers about a human scientific breakthrough. Rumors the human authorities neither confirmed nor denied. Betting syndicates reported unusual patterns of small wages placed on the human competitor from Earth-controlled territories. Most peculiar were unverified reports from the preliminary qualification rounds describing matches that ended almost before they began, with opponents simply dropping their weapons and surrendering. The official tournament historian, a multi-eyed Arksharan with a flair for the dramatic, noted in his pre-match commentary, in 17,000 recorded interspecies combat events, humans have participated in exactly 11 with a win loss record so abysmal that the actual numbers are considered too impolite to mention in proper society today. Will either continue that proud tradition of spectacular failure or produce the greatest upset in tournament history. Either way, someone's going to look absolutely ridiculous, and the smart money says it won't be Zixtar. Dr. Emlyn had not planned on becoming humanity's first tournament champion. As the leading researcher at the Quantum Interaction Laboratory in New Beijing, her days typically involved coaxing particles to violate the laws of physics rather than breaking alien limbs. Her selection as Earth's representative had raised more eyebrows on her home planet than in the wider galaxy, where humans were generally ignored in conversations about combat prowess. She has arms, 2 of them. How quaint, remarked a tentacled spectator from the Cygnes sector, squinting through compound eyes at May's tournament profile. The biography listed her achievements: 3 advanced degrees in theoretical physics, 2 patents for quantum entanglement processes, and a footnote mentioning moderate recreational martial arts training. Nothing in her background suggested she could survive 30 seconds against opponents who could bend titanium with their eyelids. May herself displayed the calm demeanor of someone who had either accepted her impending doom or knew Something no one else did. At the mandatory physical examination, medical technicians recorded vitals that placed her squarely in the unexceptional category for humans. The Juraxian doctor conducting the scan had actually chuckled a sound like rocks in a garbage disposal when measuring her muscle density. Is this some kind of psychological warfare? Asked a commentator during the pre-match analysis, sending their weakest to make us lower our guard for the next 100 years. What the extensive scans failed to detect because no one thought to look for it was the unusual activity in May's prefrontal cortex and the subtle energy fluctuations that occasionally distorted sensor readings within a 2 m radius around her. The tournament's ancient regulations prohibited weapons and most technological enhancements, but contained no provisions against abilities that, technically speaking, shouldn't exist. During the ceremonial introduction dinner, May sat quietly at the competitor's table, politely declining the opportunity to sample the mephorin-fermented brain paste that Zixter insisted was the food of champions. When a clumsy server dropped a tray of drinking vessels, witnesses later swore they saw several glasses hover momentarily before crashing to the floor. The incident was dismissed as mass hallucination brought on by excessive consumption of andromedan spirit wine. The human hasn't even requested body armor, whispered an official to his colleague. Either their species has evolved beyond fear or she's completely clueless about what's about to happen. The betting odds against May reached new heights when she appeared for her final pre-match interview wearing reading glasses, an accessory that several alien journalists mistook for some primitive visual enhancement technology until she explained their purpose was to compensate for her deteriorating eyesight. Do you have any message for your opponent? Asked the tournament host. May smiled slightly. Physics is full of surprises. Not everything that appears weak is actually lacking in force. A statement was broadcast across 17 systems and promptly dismissed as meaningless human philosophical babble. No one noticed the small metal utensil on the interview table bend slightly as she spoke. The qualifying rounds of the tournament were traditionally uneventful, a formality for established champions and a meat grinder for newcomers. When May stepped into the arena for her first match against Kiev, a hulking Taurian with retractable bone spikes, the audience prepared for the customary 30 seconds of entertainment followed by human hospitalization. What happened instead would be discussed in xenobiological circles for decades. Cav charged across the arena floor, his three-tone frame generating enough momentum to pulverize concrete just before impact. He inexplicably tripped over nothing at all. His massive body performed an improbable somersault before landing with a thunderous crash that registered on seismographs 2 continents away. Before the dust settled, Cavorn was tapping out 3 of his limbs, bent at angles his anatomy manual explicitly stated were impossible. Did anyone see what happened? Sputtered the official commentator, replaying the footage at 1:16 speed. It appears the human stood there and somehow won. Conspiracy theories erupted immediately. Equipment malfunction, hidden technology, bribery. The tournament committee launched an investigation that found precisely nothing. While May prepared for her second match against the Walrexian champion, whose venomous quills could penetrate lightweight body armor, that match lasted approximately 12 seconds. The Volrexian launched a barrage of quills, all of which stopped midair and clattered harmlessly to the ground. Moments later, the alien collapsed, clutching his thorax and frantically signaling surrender. "This is unprecedented," shouted the archer analyst. The human appears to be employing some form of standing still and winning. "We have no record of this fighting style in our database." By her third match, viewing figures had doubled. The previously unknown human was becoming the tournament's biggest sensation since the explosive decompression incident of 2389. Slow model cameras captured footage of her opponents being struck by invisible forces, their weapons flying from their hands, and in one particularly memorable instance, a Jeruvian warrior's armor crumpling like tissue paper while May appeared to be adjusting her hair. Scientific experts were baffled. Humans possess no telekinetic abilities, insisted the Galactedia's leading xenobiologist. Their brains barely generate enough electricity to power tournament officials, subjected May to increasingly invasive scans, finding nothing beyond slightly elevated neural activity. When questioned about her technique, she offered only cryptic responses about applied quantum field manipulation and probability wave functions. Zixstar, watching from his luxury viewing box, remained unimpressed. Party tricks and optical illusions, he declared to assembled media. The human has clearly hacked the arena's environmental systems against a true champion. Such deception will prove useless as May advanced through the quarterfinals by defeating a Regulan champion whose skin secreted corrosive acid. Zixstar launched a public relations offensive on "My world, we keep humans as decorative pets," he told a popular broadcast. "They're amusing but fragile. This one will make a fine addition to my collection after I demonstrate proper combat techniques tomorrow." The championship gala became a showcase for Zixstar's mockery. He presented May with a miniature version of himself, explaining loudly that it was so she would have something to remember him by after reconstructive surgery. When she accepted the gift with a polite smile, he demonstrated his signature bone-crushing technique on a solid titanium sculpture, reducing it to metallic confetti. "Perhaps we should start her in the juvenile division next year," Zixstar suggested to uproarious laughter. "I fear my full strength might accidentally erase her from existence." May sipped her water and made a small gesture with her fingers across the room. Zixstar's championship belt mysteriously unfastened itself and dropped to the floor with a resounding clang. The incident was blamed on faulty clasps and quickly forgotten. A semi-final pitted May against the legendary Dronaxian warrior Krelver, whose 6 limbs moved so quickly they appeared as mere blurs to most spectators. The match was widely considered the true test of the human's inexplicable winning streak. Krelver had famously dismantled 3 former champions without taking a single hit. Bookmakers reported record bets against May, with odds reaching 2,000 to 1 despite her previous victories. "This should finally expose the human trickery," declared the tournament commentator as both competitors entered the arena. "Kaver's neural processing speed is so advanced that he can perceive individual light particles. Whatever technological deception the human employs will be instantly detected." The massive Draxian towered over May, his chitinous exoskeleton gleaming under the arena lights. Tournament sensors detected his body temperature rising as he activated his species' combat metabolism, a physiological state that allowed Draxians to move at speeds approaching the sound barrier for short bursts. "I have studied your previous matches," Humaner announced through his translator. "Your deception ends today." May nodded politely. "I look forward to a good match." When the signal sounded, Krelver executed his signature opening move, a simultaneous attack from 6 different angles that had overwhelmed every previous opponent's defensive capabilities. What happened next caused 3 different tournament recording devices to malfunction from operator error as technicians dropped their equipment in shock instead of attempting to dodge the lightning gas strikes. May simply stood motionless in the center of the arena. Each of Krello's attacks stopped precisely 2 cm from her body, as if striking an invisible barrier. The Draxian's momentum abruptly reversed, sending him skidding backward across the arena floor. "Impossible," shrieked the xenobiologist commentator. "No known technology can counter a Danaxian speed strike." Krell switched tactics, launching a barrage of throwing spikes From his secondary limbs, the projectiles hung suspended in midair before dropping harmlessly to the ground. The crowd watched in stunned silence as the increasingly desperate Dranexian deployed every weapon and technique in his considerable arsenal, all with the same result: complete ineffectiveness. After 3 minutes of increasingly frantic attacks, Krelver paused, his respiratory vents heaving with exertion. "What are you?" he demanded. May's response was picked up by arena microphones. "Just someone who paid attention in physics class." What followed defied conventional description. Krelvor launched himself into a final desperate attack, only to find himself suspended in midair, his 6 limbs split outward as if held by invisible restraints. For 10 seconds he hung there, struggling against forces no one could see, before being gently lowered to the ground in a technically perfect submission position. From his VIP box, Zixter watched with mandibles tightly clenched, the Mepher equivalent of a concerned frown, though publicly he maintained his dismissive attitude. Private footage showed him studying Ma's matches obsessively, his staff noting unusual amounts of stress fractures appearing in his crystalline exoskeleton. "A permissive parlor trick," he announced to gathered reporters after the match, "but whatever technology she's concealing, it cannot affect a Morin champion's crystalline structure. Tomorrow I will reveal her deception and restore honor to the tournament." Behind the bravado, however, Zixter secretly ordered his staff to prepare an emergency evacuation plan just in case physics decided to stop working altogether during the final match. The final match of the Galactic Combat Tournament transformed from a sporting event into what sociologists would later classify as a civilization-defining moment. Arena security implemented unprecedented measures, including quantum stabilization fields designed to neutralize any hidden technology. Scientists from 17 species monitored every subatomic fluctuation within the combat zone. The Committee of 17 themselves oversaw the proceedings, aware that whatever happened next would permanently alter interspecies relations. Zixter entered the arena in full ceremonial battle form, his crystalline exoskeleton reconfigured to maximum density. Additional crystal formations protruded from his forearms, creating natural weapons that gleamed with prismatic menace under the arena lights. His pre-fight ritual involved a display of strength that reduced a tournament's standard durability block into molecular dust. "For the honor of Mephra and all civilized species," he announced through amplified mandible clicks, "I will expose this human deception and remind the galaxy of proper natural order." The crowd's response was complex cheers from species traditionally allied with Mephin's, uneasy murmurs from those who had reviewed footage of May's previous matches, and the distinct sound of bookmakers developing stress ulcers as unprecedented wages continued to flood in. May entered wearing the standard tournament uniform, her expression one of professional focus rather than intimidation. She carried no weapons, wore no armor, and based on elevated security scans, apparently had nothing unusual about her whatsoever, aside from neural activity that occasionally caused monitoring equipment to short-circuit. The tournament master ceremonially reviewed the rules. Combat continued until submission, incapacitation, or exit from the arena. Boundary medical regeneration was available for non-fatal injuries. Molecular dissolution was strongly discouraged but technically permissible under subsection 87B. Zixter implemented his intimidation strategy. Immediately he circled May, slowly striking his crystalline arms together to produce deafening sonic impacts. Crystal fragments scattered across the arena. Floor fragments deliberately propelled at velocities just under the threshold for rule violations. Several grazed May's uniform, drawing pin pricks of blood that caused medical monitors to activate. "The human bleeds," announced a commentator. Unnecessarily as expected from such fragile physiology, what wasn't expected was May's complete lack of reaction. She maintained her position, tracking Zixter with calm focus as he circled. This apparent indifference visibly agitated the champion, whose bioluminescent patterns shifted to warning coloration. Perhaps she's paralyzed with fear, suggested an analyst. Human nervous systems frequently malfunction under extreme stress. Zixter launched his opening attack, a four-limbed strike designed to incapacitate from multiple angles. Simultaneously, to everyone's shock, May's city stepped with such precision that the champion's momentum carried him past her in an ungraceful lunge. His crystalline form crashed into the arena floor, producing a sound like a chandelier falling into a rock crusher. The crowd's collective gasp was followed by unprecedented silence as Zixter regained his footing, mandibles twitching with what xenobiologists recognized as the Maporan expression of extreme rage. He reconfigured his crystalline structure to offensive formation and charged again. What followed was less a combat match and more a physics demonstration. Each attack met invisible resistance just before reaching its target. Crystalline limbs were deflected by seemingly empty air. The champion's increasingly desperate tactics, sonic disruption, crystalline projectiles, even a rarely used vibrational field proved completely ineffective. After 7 minutes of increasingly erratic attacks, Zixter stepped back, his exoskeleton resonating with frustrated energy. Then came the moment that would be immortalized in tournament history. He pointed directly at May and emitted the Majoran equivalent of contemptuous laughter. Whatever technology you've concealed, human, it cannot save you forever. Your species remains an evolutionary joke. May tilted her head slightly. Is that your professional assessment? It is, Zixter declared, raising all four arms in a gesture of supreme dismissal, and I will prove it. By the sickening crack echoed throughout the arena as his upper right arm, the strongest of the four, suddenly bent backwards at an angle that made structural engineers in the audience WSE. Crystalline fragments scattered across the arena floor as the champion's natural armor failed catastrophically at the joint. May hadn't moved, she hadn't gestured, her expression hadn't even changed. 17,000 spectators collectively stopped breathing as a second arm twisted with an even louder crack. Zixter dropped to his knees, mandibles frozen in shock. Medical alerts blared as the champion's bioithms registered extreme distress. Submit, May said quietly. Please, I don't want to cause permanent damage. Zixter's surrender signal flashed before she finished speaking. The aftermath of May's victory unfolded with the diplomatic delicacy of a supernova in a fireworks factory. Emergency sessions of the Galactic Confederation Security Council convened while May sat calmly in the tournament's ceremonial winners' chamber, sipping tea and finally explaining what 17 species had collectively missed about humanity. We call it psychokinesis, she told the hastily assembled xenobiological research team, the ability to manipulate physical reality through directed neural energy. It's actually quite common among humans. About 85% of our population possesses the capability to some degree, though most never develop it beyond moving a pencil across a desk. The revelation sent shock waves through the galactic community, humans dismissed for decades as barely space-faring primates with delusions of relevance possessed natural abilities that effectively rendered physical combat obsolete. They seemingly unremarkable bipeds could manipulate matter with thought alone, an evolutionary development that most advanced species had determined was theoretically impossible. We kept it quiet for obvious reasons, explained the human diplomatic representative who arrived via emergency transport. Our history is filled with examples of technologically superior civilizations destroying less advanced ones when we Encountered the galactic community and realized we were outnumbered by trillions. Concealment seemed prudent. Until we better understood our neighbors' footage of Zixter's crystalline arms shattering without physical contact. Played on loop across 17,000 worlds, xenopsychologists reported mass identity. Crises among species that had defined themselves by physical superiority. The Majoran Stock Exchange experienced its largest single-day drop in recorded history. The tournament committee found itself in an unprecedented regulatory quandary. No rules explicitly prohibited natural psychic abilities, largely because no one had considered them possible. The Confederation Legal Counsel pointed out that retroactively disqualifying would constitute speciesist discrimination under Charter Section 7. The human competitor violated no rules, announced the tournament master at a chaotic press conference. The championship stands. We may need to reconsider certain category classifications for future events. Meanwhile, across diplomatic channels, the implications reverberated with seismic force security councils reassessed. Military doctrines built around physical weaponry. Trade negotiators reviewed agreements with the previously harmless humans. Cultural exchange programs suddenly received unprecedented funding. In the medical bay, a sedated Zikar received treatment for multiple compound fractures while maintaining consciousness enough to issue a formal statement. The Maporan Dominion acknowledges the superior combat technique of the human champion and welcomes this new understanding between our species. Translation algorithms noted significant stress patterns in his vocal emissions, suggesting abject terror was a more accurate interpretation than diplomatic respect. As May prepared to return to Earth with the tournament trophy, a surprisingly modest crystalline sculpture that she refrained from mentioning resembled a common human paperweight. She offered one final observation to the still stunned galactic press corps. Perhaps now would be a good time to revisit those trade agreements and maybe reconsider building those military outposts along our sector border. Just a friendly suggestion. The tournament's conclusion triggered what historians would later term the Great Recalibration. Within 24 hours, 17 trade agreements with Earth were spontaneously revised on more favorable terms. Military vessels patrolling human space mysteriously found urgent assignments elsewhere. The Galactic Confederation's official classification of humans upgraded from minor species of limited capacity to civilization of significant strategic importance. With unprecedented bureaucratic efficiency, May's return to Earth sparked celebrations that temporarily united the planet's notoriously fractious governments. The physicist resumed her research the following week, politely declining 17 offers of interstellar diplomatic positions and one marriage proposal from an Arcturan royal. When asked about her victory, she simply noted, "I'm better at applying theoretical principles than explaining them." The demonstration seemed most efficient. The scientific community spiraled into chaos as centuries of xenobiological assumptions collapsed. Research grants for human psychokinetic studies increased by 8,000% while enrollment in traditional combat me's plummeted. Particularly amusing was the sudden popularity of human meditation techniques among species previously convinced that consciousness itself was an evolutionary liability. Most telling was the radical shift in social interactions. Species that had routinely dismissed humans from serious discussions now frantically sought their opinions. Restaurants across the galaxy hastily added Earth cuisine to their menus. Entertainment channels featured humans performing mundane tasks with their minds, achieving viewership numbers that crashed several planetary communication grids. Zixter emerged from medical regeneration physically healed, but psychologically transformed. The former champion abandoned competitive combat for a surprising new career in Interspecies diplomatic relations becoming an unexpected advocate for human integration into galactic institutions. His best-selling memoir My Arms, My Humbling became required reading. In Militarities Throughout Known Space, I misunderstood a fundamental principle of evolutionary adaptation. Zixstar explained during his first post-tournament interview, physical strength is merely one pathway to species dominance. The ability to reorganize reality with thought is significantly more efficient. The slight tremor in his mandibles when discussing psychokinetics did not go unnoticed. Perhaps most significant was the revelation that humans had not in fact revealed their full capabilities. Classified Confederation intelligence suggested that tournament regulations had limited May to using approximately 30% of her potential abilities, information that caused several military strategists to take early retirement. As the dust settled and a new galactic order began taking shape, a popular Mapuran philosopher offered what became the definitive observation of the era. The universe operates on a principle of cosmic irony. The moment you become absolutely certain of your superior position is precisely when you discover that evolution has a particularly twisted sense of humor, and that the unimpressive creature you've been dismissing might just be able to unmake your reality without spilling their beverage.